Are you ready to break free from the doubts and limits holding you back? Welcome to Embrace Your Value, where therapy meets coaching to help you unlock your true worth and take control of your life.
Hi, I'm Kristen, a trauma therapist dedicated to helping you heal, break old patterns, and reclaim your power.
And I'm Jen, your support coach, here to show you how to set fierce boundaries, embrace self compassion, and step boldly into the life you deserve.
So, whether you're stuck in self doubt or feeling lost, know this: your value isn't up for negotiation. It's time to own it.
Every week, we tackle real issues that challenge, inspire, and empower you to live with purpose and confidence.
So, grab your favorite drink, take a deep breath, and let's get started.
Because you're not here to play small, it's time to embrace your value. Today, we want to talk about core values. We want to spend a little time just defining core values, what it looks like to live authentically, how you navigate conflicts around your core values, all the things, the values in relationships, just all of it. So, this is really where we want to focus today, and we are so excited that you are here with us. So, to begin, I just want to ask my friend Kristen, how would you define core values?
Yeah, I mean, what a great question. So, this is something that I talk to my clients about a lot. So, the way I see values is how we make our decisions, like our daily life decisions, our big life decisions. We have to look at what our values are. So, values can be things like I value time, I value family, I value work, I value money, I value fun. So we just want to define what those are, prioritize them. And then if we make decisions out of those values, we always feel good about them.
Yeah, I love that. And I don't know about you, but for me, the thing that always comes to mind when I'm thinking about my core values, um, is, well, number one is, am I living in integrity? Like, I think integrity is one of the biggest values out there, and that just kind of encompasses everything. So it's like if I'm living in integrity, all those values are listed in it. And integrity could be a little different for everybody, but for the most part, it means living in your true authenticity, because apparently I can't say that word. But living in your true authenticity and knowing who you are. The other thing I've noticed that I notice about boundaries is, I'm sorry, core values, is that if you are lacking boundaries, it's usually because your values either aren't defined for you or you're not sharing them with other people, and therefore your boundaries are just they've gone by the wayside. So that's a really good test to see if you're living in your true authenticity and by your core values. Is, are your boundaries being met? Do people continue to cross them, or do you uphold them, and do you do that?
I agree. Living authentically really does mean living out of your core values. And that just really, if we work on our decision making in our everyday lives and we make those decisions out of our authentic self, out of our core values, then we can feel good about them. So, like if you're someone who says, do I want to work an extra 30 minutes or do I want to go home? You look at, okay, well, is my value with family or home time more important than my work value? It is. Okay, I'll just go ahead and go home. Maybe I'll work the extra 30 minutes another day, or maybe I won't do it at all because I want to live authentically through my values.
Yeah, and I think too, a thing that I find with my clients anyway, I don't know if you find this on your end, but those values are allowed to shift and adjust as like every day. Like your family doesn't have to come before your work every single day and vice versa. Like they can, but they don't have to. You get to decide, maybe there's something really important going on at work and your family's doing really great and you're like, it's okay. I can spend that extra time at work. They don't have to always be this thing that doesn't shift. You get to decide that for you. And I think that's really important for people to know because I know a lot of my clients get really stuck in that. Well, I said this was what was important. Now I've given it a number, a defining number, and I can't change it. And that's just not true.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, Jen. It is, we need to look at everything as having some fluidity, right? Because our lives change, our days change, our needs change. As our kids get older, they need less. As we become more comfortable at work, maybe we need less time there. So we just have to really take a look, like you're saying, and just know that they're fluid, and that nothing is set in stone except for just what your values are, not
Yes.
necessarily in what order they come.
Yeah, absolutely. And just the fact that you're living what your values are. You get to decide how you live your life. You don't have to let others dictate that. So on that note, let's chat a little bit about how you navigate conflicts when you're dealing with values. So there are definitely times that conflicts will come up, and some of that is just, what are mine, but I think some of it too is societal pressures or norms that we have to live up to, and how do we work through those? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and I think this is a really appropriate topic right now, considering the political climate that we're in. Is a lot of people have conflicting values about what's going on in our country right now. And I don't know that there's a right or a wrong answer, but it does have to do with your values. And sometimes you're right, like society says maybe we should think one thing, or we should do one thing, or we should be one thing. And this goes back to um the core of what we're trying to do here is like knowing what your worth is. What's my worth to myself? What's my worth to society? What's my worth to the world? What do I want to show people? And we make those decisions out of those values.
Yeah.
And that's how we sort of need to resolve conflicts without feeling like we're backing down. So like you mentioned boundaries earlier, I think that's just a great example of a time when we say, look, my boundary is this, and I'm not going to back down from that. Because when you do back down from your boundaries, you start to feel yucky about yourself, like you've compromised your values. And that's when we start getting into anxiety, depression, like those things pile up on us. And that's kind of where we can go sometimes.
Yeah, I totally agree. And another thought that came up as you were talking, which is just because you're having a conflict doesn't mean you don't need to be kind. So even if it's to yourself, even if you're having an inner confliction on what do I believe, what do I feel, who do I side with, da 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 da, you can still be kind to yourself. You don't have to criticize yourself, and you don't have to criticize other people. You can definitely, and I always say this when it comes to boundaries, you can definitely set healthy boundaries and still be kind and gentle with people. And so I think that's really important here also when you're dealing with conflict, is just to remember that, they are a person and they have feelings, and you can be kind. You can uphold your boundaries and still be kind. So kind of keeping that in mind as well. It goes with my positivity that I'm always saying. So,
Right. And
yeah.
I agree. Like it's kind like kindness, right? Like I think we have a lack of kindness in our society at times, and being kind to ourselves, right? Our value, our worth, it all comes from kindness to ourselves. The other thing, when we're talking about conflicts, like especially when we're talking about like society conflicts and things like that, I think people a lot of times will assume a conflict where there isn't one. So there's a difference between disagreeing with somebody and a conflict. And so knowing that those two things are not the same can really help people navigate with their values through discussions or situations where there is a value conflict.
Yes, I would agree. And I love that you brought that up. It actually made me flip to an image. We were watching football yesterday. We were watching NFL, and there was a play that happened, and there should have been a flag called for some sort of a personal foul. And the player got in the ref's face, and he was making his point, but he took it just a step too far. So instead of leaving it as a disagreement, he actually turned it into a conflict, and he got the penalty, which I actually think ended up making them lose the game because it was towards the end and it was a close game and it was a whole thing. But that's the thing. Like when we make disagreements turn into conflicts, we're just making it so much worse. And so if we can just take it from that place of kindness and just what is my value, like your value and your worth and your core values, they all go hand in hand. And when you come off acting like a jerk, you're showing people that you don't even care about your own worth and your own values and your core values. So I think that's really important to keep in mind as well. Um,
I yes, I agree. And I would say that really, because I'm a marriage and family therapist, that really plays out when we're looking at marital relationships or partnership relationships. Is people will assume a conflict or think that a conflict has to escalate in order to quote win. And that like winning is somehow the way to go, which that implies that there's a scorekeeper somewhere in the relationship. And that is one of those things that I talk to people about a lot, is like scorekeeping is one of the most negative things that you can do in a relationship. And if your value is your partnership with your significant other, then that's one of those things that you need to kind of look at and say, do I value winning or do I value my relationship?
Absolutely. I love that. And the next topic we had was values and relationships. So I think that really segued into that beautifully. And yeah, I think that was wonderful. So let's talk about um ethics when you're talking about core values. And I kind of touched on it, I know a little bit, just keeping yourself in check. I think that's part of ethics. But what are some other things that you see from a therapy standpoint around ethics with values and decision making and core values?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's still, to me, it just kind of all equals, if we make our decisions out of our values, then we're living authentically and ethically, right?
Yeah,
In our own ethics. Now, I'm governed by a board, right? So I have a set of ethics that I have to uphold for my profession. Do I agree with every single one of them? Well, maybe not, but that's kind of something that I have to do, right? So I have to be fluid, I have to be flexible and know, there are times that there will be something that I don't necessarily agree with. Um, but I do make my decisions based out of both my values and ethics, and then, of course, the ones that I have to uphold legally through my board. And that is with clients, right? When I look at my personal life and I look at the ethics, I think, and you mentioned this earlier, Jen, it's like, do I just want to be a good person? Right? Like,
exactly.
that's my big ethic in life, is
Yeah.
like, do I want to be a good person or do I want to be a jerk? And
Yeah,
sometimes, to be honest, I want to be a jerk. And so I'll just do that. But most of the time, it's like, I want to be a good person. And so I choose how I'm going to behave in my ethics, in my values, and within my own boundaries for myself.
absolutely. Yes. And I think I mean, I love the fact that you brought up that there are, sometimes we have work ethics that we have to follow and we have personal ethics, and sometimes they're not exactly the same. But, it really does come down to who do you want the world to see you as? Do you want the world to see you as a pushover? Do you want the world to see you as somebody who stands up for themselves, carries themselves with grace, and loves everybody that, in a way that people know when they're around? It's just so amazing to me when I meet people, and I meet a lot of people, a lot of times now online because this is kind of where our culture and society has gone. But it's always amazing to see the people that understand good values, good ethics, good demeanor versus those that are still really, they might not be jerks, but they're just really sheepish and they don't come through. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I feel like the world's going to eat you alive if you don't learn how to do this. And this is exactly why we're here. We don't do these conversations. Well, we do. We have fun. So let's be honest. We do them to have fun. Like
We do
that's
have fun.
just
Yes.
what we're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we also want to help and encourage and inspire. And we want to uplift you guys into knowing that if you're not there, it's okay, but you can get there. There is more for you to get there. There's always something there. We're always growing. You might be better in another area. Kristen and I were talking about this before we jumped on the call. She was like, explain this to me because you know more about this,
Very
but I always think of her in terms of being the smarter side of things because it's just how I know her. And so it doesn't matter. We all learn from each other and we all grow with each other. And I never have this desire to stop growing. I can be 104 and I'm still going to be reading something that's educational. I'm still going to be listening to somebody's podcast or whatever we're doing at that point in time. It might just be ingrained in our brain at that point. I don't know. Um, but I'm still going to be doing that because I never want to stop. That's just not where it's at. So this is why we do this. That's why I'm explaining this because this to me is part of ethics is this is why you continue to grow is because you're always wanting to get better and better. You don't want to stagnate because if the body stagnates, what happens? It
the
dies.
mind stagnates. Yeah, and it dies.
And it
Yes.
dies. I mean, your
Yeah.
body, when your body stops working, it dies.
True.
And your mind kind of does the same thing.
Mhm.
Will just not help you as much. It will not be as good for you. So, anyways, I'm off my soapbox about that. I don't know where that came from, but y'all got it. So,
Well,
yes.
we appreciate it. So, but
Thanks.
I do want to say something on that, which is a lot of times our values are defined for us in childhood, right? So, learning and growing may have been one of those things that you were given as a value in childhood or that you learned along the way was important to you. And so we have to look back at our childhood and say, what did I learn? Right? This is a lot of what I do as a therapist is what did I learn as a kid? What do I want to hold on to? And what do I want to let go of? Right. And I think that letting go part, people really struggle with that.
Yes.
That's a lot of work that I do with people is like letting go of some of those childhood values. They could be cultural values, they could be religious values, they could be, just any kind of values that you were brought up in that your parents gave you or the environment that you grew up in gave you. Um, and that shapes that shapes who we are, and sometimes we have to go back and there's a whole theory, a whole uh therapeutic theory on doing a narrative, like a rewrite of your story,
Yeah.
and to say this is a story that was written for me and now I can rewrite the story and I can live that story from here on out.
Absolutely. And, you know, I'm really nodding with Kristen because I think that's part of what I've done with my work. And for myself, that's part of where I've come and grown. And it was funny when you were talking about things from childhood, I was thinking, yeah, it took me a long time to get over the belief that money doesn't grow on trees. Now, I realize money still doesn't grow on trees literally, but I also had to learn that if I needed it, it was always going to be there. And that took me a long time to understand and to get to. And so it was just one of those things. But yeah, that was kind of the concept that came back to me was, oh yeah, I learned that money doesn't grow on trees. And that was definitely, you know, ingrained.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those like little catchphrases sometimes our parents will use, and we hear it enough times and it becomes part of our narrative, right? That money doesn't grow on trees and that you have to value it, and like again, sometimes to the point of like you need to hold on to it to
Right.
where it's even like unhealthy,
Right.
where you deny yourself some of the things that you really need as a human, so that you can do, uphold that quote value of money doesn't grow on trees.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. Um, yeah, I love that. Um, we have covered so many of the things that we made a list on. Is there anything else that you would like to discuss around core values? Um, we've really covered a lot of it just talking.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other couple of things that I would really like to talk about, which is values in mental health and values in parenting, this may just be for another episode, because I have a lot to say about that. So,
All right, well, why don't we make that our next episode and we'll just continue this so that
okay,
it's not super long. And
okay.
yeah, so be sure you join us next week because we're going to talk about your values and mental health and your values and parenting. So until then, we will see you next time.
See you next time. Thank you for being here with us today.
If today's episode hit home, don't just keep it to yourself. Subscribe, leave us a review, and share this episode with someone who needs to hear it. Because everyone deserves to know their worth.
Next week, we're diving even deeper with more insights and tools to help you break free from limitations and live authentically.
Until then, keep raising your standards, owning your worth, and embracing your value.